Hello, what's up, avid Sapphire Steel Wheel and non-wheel enjoyers of of the deck? There was a really good report over the weekend. Result, sorry, not report. That Lamb Chop got, that Fam got, not Fam, sorry, Lamb Chop got. Everyone knows Lamb. We had him on the channel once. Lovely guy. DK Fam won the event. Sorry, that's why Fam was on my mind. But if we look past, of course, DK Fam's list will be everywhere as well. By the way, Ruby Sapphire. Everyone will want to really try that at Store Champ. So I think for the last week of Store Champs, please just expect that that's going to be everywhere. But at the Melbourne event, if we look past that Ruby Sapphire list that's going to take Storm, and we look past, of course, the controversy that happened, and of course, Lamb's run was ended by the individual that's involved in that controversy. So, just look past all that stuff. We get some really good results. We get some really good data to look at. Of course, the event was, I believe, actually capped at like 1,000, but they only got 530, 510 people or something like that actually turn up. So that's very interesting to look at. Of course, we don't know what about the region and reasons why. I mean, logistically, people just couldn't make it. I couldn't really make it from Europe. Um, and of course, maybe the scene just wasn't that big enough, and even Australia itself is quite big. To go from one side to Melbourne is quite a big travel. So yeah, we only got about 536. So it's interesting to see what the skill level was like. Of course, a lot of people from Europe and America went there to do the event as well. But yeah, from it, no matter what you say about that, top four, we end up seeing Lamb get a really good Sapphire Steel list with some interesting cards as well. That there's some one card in particular. I'm not going to say some cards because there's actually just one card that people have completely written off. And I remember even if you hang out in the 20 Law chat and see all the discussions there, I mean everyone should hang out there if you play Sapphire Steel and enjoy it. Um, the one card Pleakley that everyone pretty much just said is pretty bad. Lamb was always a big supporter of it, and I really liked that for him. You know, same felt the same with some of the other cards that I've been putting in the Kiwi build that Justin made. You know, a lot of people just said these cards are objectively bad, and now they're doing quite well. So it's really cool to see Pleatley come through, and I like it when a player can do that and put their stamp on it. Of course, he did that before with Merlin's Cottage. I don't know how much he stands behind Merlin's Cottage anymore. It hasn't really been sticking around on our lists, but he could say, hey, well, I got a top 8 in this event with that, and here he's got Pleakley to a top 4. So that's really cool. And I looked at the combo here in the deck is to play the Simba down, get the card draw, get the utility from it, cycle, and of course Sapphire Steel is not uncommon to brick. Get that draw done, and then you can Pleakley and drop that into the Inkwell. And of course, Simba is able to hit like a Merfolk or a Diablo, and if you protect it for a turn, you can get to that point where he's got so much value out of it. You know, you've got that card cycle, and you're going to get to ramp with it, and it got to remove something from the board. So definitely, I think that's a really cool little combo there. You've also got the Argus back in as well, which is just it's always been like one of my favorite cards. I really like that card. And the first person who ever told me about that card was Justin, the one who worked on the Kiwi build. It was just back in the day when you had to find an answer to Flynn Cecil or you lost the game. And that's something also interesting as well, I like to say about Sapphire Steel Wheel right now, because, of course, the last few days I've jumped back into it after seeing the results that Lamb got with the list. Trying to make my own list, and I'll cover my list in a sec. But let's look at Lamb's list because there's just much more accolades to this one right now. It was very interesting back in the day where you had to really think about the Flynn Sisu and the Ruby Amethyst matchup. Like that was the matchup you had to beat. You very much put the effort into making sure you could win that matchup. Nowadays, you don't really do that anymore. I feel like no people have really done that. I believe the Argers must still be in there for that Flynn Sisu matchup, but it feels like people have really um, not put the weight we used to have in it. I mean, you used to put Rise of Titans in there as well. We tried the Cuscos and the Simbas and the Hideaways because you really just didn't want them to get a lot of value, and you really wanted to like smash that matchup down to be a 2-0. But these days, I just don't think people really think about it. They think about Steel Song, think about Doc Mines, how to beat Ruby Sapphire, and it's just very interesting that the deck has evolved in that way. As I feel like Sapphire Steel Wheel was always that like Ruby Amethyst killer if you could pilot it properly. But now it's just become this sort of, the meta's got so wide that we're having to think of so many other matchups rather than the Ruby Amethyst matchup, which has been really interesting. Of course, in here, the card that I haven't seen in here is Sail the Azurite Sea, which I just thought, most people thought it was really good, but of course not gone for it, and that's fair enough. Using a TPO as well, so overall you've got 8 chances to ramp, which is really nice. In Sapphire Steel, it's pretty much always been Quill is king over all the other ramp options because especially in a wheel build, you can just dump everything into the Inkwell, and then you can play the whole new world, get a free fresh of hands, play a bit, dump the hand, play another whole new world. So that's just really cool. But yeah, using the Pleakley to control the board early, like I say with the Simba, to trade some things maybe, and then put it in the Inkwell. It's probably actually going to be able to remove nothing, but you can live in a dream where it takes out a Merfolk. But getting a 3/4 down to just sort of controlling the board, that's going to take out a Calhoun or a Smee and still be alive on the board to make problems for them. So that's really cool. And then you get into playing the 5 drop, maybe the Cogsworth down, you could sing the whole new world and it's protected even more. So that's really cool. And the Pyros Arthur tech, or tech, it's just the combo. I know it's not really a tech. Is really cool because Pyros will reset every time you challenge things, and now Arthur is saying, well, you can challenge ready things, so you can get an entire board wipe. He'll become a 7/4 as well with resist 2. So there's pretty much nothing he won't be able to take out besides like a Tamatoa. So that's really cool if you can ever get that combo set up. Of course, people are very skeptical about it because he is a 5/4. That's not particularly hard for a like steel deck to remove for damage. You've got a Long Came Zeus, you've got a Strength of the Raging Fire, you've got an Ursula Sing, double Sing, let the Storm Rage on it, takes it out. So people are quite skeptical about the card, but two in here, and that's really cool. You could maybe even set up for the play where you've ramped to like 9 or 8 ink or something like that, and you play Pyros and a Pete on the same turn, and then the next turn you set up to use that Arthur for that full clear. Of course, most people are playing it as a one-off. I've seen like people aren't really going heavy on that being the game plan. Maybe because he's just not inkable, and that combo is not always going to be. Even if you had good ratios, maybe 4x 4x, which would be mad if you 4x Arthur, you wouldn't really be able to get it off as consistently as you'd like because you need to wheel and dump things into Inkwell. And then after as well, that's just a board control clear, so you'd need to finish the game out with the Tamatoas and the dimes and stuff like that. But it's really interesting. I've seen people just include a one-off Arthur without the Pyros as well. I don't think you have to include the Pyros. I think Arthur as well, you can buff it on the Tinkerbell. So he's just a good card in general. It's a 3/6, 3 quester as well, so like statted wise, he's pretty good. There's not really Medusas around in the meta right now. So yeah, I just think it's pretty cool to have it as a one-off, and it's going to catch people off guard as well, especially in Swiss. You think then they can't challenge my ready characters and have peated them. What can they do? Maybe Hades one thing, but then you Arthur buff Tinkerbell and your board's getting wider whilst theirs is getting smaller. So yeah, I think it's really cool. Twin Fire as well. I think Twin Fire is interesting. You can probably change that around with Fire the Cannons if you wanted to. But yeah, I think that pairs very well with the Grab Your Swords. And most people, if you're a Sapphire Steel veteran, you've been around for a while, we usually always play Grab Your Swords at 3, and that like never changed. Of course, I've kind of gone away to play No Wheel and play the Kiwi build and come back, and I've noticed the Grab Your Swords at 2 has been quite common between a lot of the mainstays and the tryhards for the Sapphire Steel Wheel list. So I pretty much am taking it on board. It does allow for more room in the whole overall uninkables in the deck, and also as well like Grab Your Swords kind of has been a bit power crept. The 2 damage across the board doesn't do much. As a lot of things just aren't going to get removed by it, even if you do the Tinkerbell thing where you sing Grab Your Swords and play Tinkerbell. The Grab Your Swords just not doing enough damage and not clearing enough stuff. So I've noticed a lot of people's thought process is either you max it out to do 4, so you could do being a higher percent chance to get 2 in hand at once, you could double sing Grab Your Swords, or you just go down to 2 and then you use other removal like Twin Fire. I've seen Zeus's as well, Arthur, Tinkerbell. So yeah, I think that's a fine, and that's kind of maybe where we're going to be going forward because the card's kind of dead. We don't really want to remove it from the deck because it's one of the cards that's still keeping us alive. But yeah, keeping it 2 seems fine. And it's kind of the comparison is, of course, um, uh, and Ruby, they've got Be Prepared. That card can't really be power crept unless there was like a cheaper board clear card. But so because just destroy everything is just good. But ours is of course damage based, so there's easily they can power creep it by just putting static characters like Daisy and Genie, which they have done, which is just making it harder. You used to be able to wheel and then you would maybe get into your clear and whatever they play, you could clear at the turn afterwards. But now they compete you. Now they can just play stronger health characters. So yeah, it's just got a little bit trickier in that essence. And there's one less Thought Sphere. I don't really have a comment on that or what to say. Probably just to keep the numbers down and how many cards are in a deck. But yeah, it's fine. I mean, to be honest with you, 7 is fine. I think yeah, that's really good. And who am I to judge? Lamb's got so many more accolades than me and does so well. So there's always stuff to learn from this deck. And looking at it and just take what you want from it. If you try it out and you find out Pleakley isn't for you, you won't be the only Sapphire Steel who thinks that way. But if you try it out and it really fits you, it's really cool. So yeah, it's really nice to see Sapphire Steel winning again and getting this rightful spot in top 4, top 8. It's the rightful spot of it's in the top cut, very high up, and it's going to go to Worlds or it's going to go to Continentals, but it's not gone to win. We haven't had a Sapphire Steel win an event yet, is what I'm trying to say. Not a DLC or a Continental, but it always represents itself somewhere in the top cut. So it's nice to see it was back to that for the Melbourne event, especially for the first event in Oceanic. Yeah, really cool list. And onto my pile that I've made because I was like, I want to play it again. Then, I didn't. I mean, this is mainly from a player called Primor. He's German, and actually, I think, to be honest with you, at this point, we were changing it around quite a lot as I was testing it in different environments. And I think maybe even at this point, it's card for card. So sorry, Promo, if I say this is my list, probably is your list. It was also someone else we had on the channel, but it's really fun. Of course, instead of the Pleakleys, we're using a Jim Hawkins because his requirement is just that you have to have inked twice that turn, which you do quite often. And even if you ink once, he's a 2/4, which isn't the worst. And I quite like Jim Hawkins because he can't be Rapunzel cheesed. So when he turns sideways, they can't run like a daisy into it the same way they can do with a Smee and then heal it with a Rapunzel. It doesn't mean he'll probably be taken out unless you can say like, they do Daisy turn one, Calhoun turn two, and you've got a Pop Skull out, so you can take out the Daisy, heal it, and then the requirement for them is like let the Storm Rage on, and then run the Calhoun in, which is just like quite an expensive turn for them when they should have been playing a Lawrence on that turn. So that's really cool. And then we've got some different one-offs in here that I think mainly are for testing right now, but this looks just very stock, very standard, what I think you'd see from Sapphire Steel. Of course, we have 8 ramp options, the same way that Lamb does. But ours are all own sail, which I'll admit is really fun when you can get it off. If you can get like the sail into fire the cannons, the same way you can do fishbone into fire the cannons, that's really fun. But there are 16 uninkables in this list, and it can get a little bit dicey. Captain Hook on the draw with the fire the cannons is fine as well, especially as everyone's pretty much on low to the ground, except for when you have to play into Ruby Sapphire and it's all expensive. So you kind of need the best of both worlds, and the win con for the deck is always going to be Tamatars and Aerials. So yeah, this is sort of just very stock, very standard. I believe it's pretty much 100% Primor's card. I probably should have looked at that before I did the video, but I was sort of like just testing it, taking cards in and out, and I think we ended up being the exact same list as him. But yeah, it's pretty much what it's going to be like. Zeus's as well, very good for just full round board clear. And I felt as well like green hasn't been represented as much. Like I'm not seeing that much green still. You see the odd green still, sorry for that cough. You see the odd green still here and there, the odd green purple here and there, but like in the grand scheme of things, Along Came Zeus is fairly safe to have in the hand. Whereas my downside of the card was it was a big chunky uninkable song, and it would just get snatched by green. But green's sort of going away for a while right now. We're not really seeing it as often. So yeah, that's kind of cool to use them. You know, clear genies, you can clear locations, you can do enough damage with them. Captain Hook, Jim Hawkins, and Smee put enough board pressure on the board. That Robin Hood's been fun. I was quite big on Robin Hood right at the start of the set in the no wheel list. The first change I did was just put 2 Robin Hoods in because you could ramp up, and then if you didn't want to Tinkerbell, you play the Robin Hood out, and then the genie couldn't quest without a favourable trade from you. So yeah, I'd really say try Lamb's out lists out if you want to try something different and you really want to go back to Sapphire Steel Wheel because I think it's fairly doing well. Even on Ink Decks, if you look, there's been quite a lot of reports in the Law League. Bananino managed to get top 16 in Law League with that as well, so there's loads of data out there. And the deck's just back, I think. Back. It's never went away. But it's just, yeah, it's really fun to play again. I'm definitely going to use it for my last store champs.